I can start now. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Chalanam vyuhanam praptir netratvam dravya shabdayo sarvendriyanam atmatvam vayu karmabhi lakshanam. So now we can go through the word meanings. Chalanam is a moving. Vyuhanam is mixing. Prapti is allowing approach. Netratvam, carrying. Dravya, shabdayo, particles of substances and sound. Sarva indriyanam, of all the senses. Atmatvam is providing for the proper functioning. Vayu, of air. Karma, by actions. Abhilakshanam, the distinct characteristics. The action, now we're going to read the translation. That is, the action of air is exhibited in the movements, mixing, allowing approach to the objects of sound and other sense perceptions, and providing for the proper functioning of all other senses. Purport. We can perceive the action of air when the branches of a tree move or when dry leaves on the ground collect together. Similarly, it is only by the action of the air that a body moves. And when the air circulation is impeded, many diseases result. Paralysis, nervous breakdowns, madness, and many other diseases are actually due to insufficient circulation of air. In the Ayurvedic system, these diseases are treated on the basis of air circulation. If from the beginning one takes care of the process of air circulation, such diseases cannot take place. From the Ayurveda as well as from the Srimad Bhagavatam, it is clear that so many activities are going on internally and externally because of air alone. And as soon as there is some deficiency in air circulation, these activities cannot take place. Here it is clearly stated, Netratvam Dravya Shabdayo. Our sense of proprietorship over action is also due to the activity of the air. If the air circulation is stifled, we cannot approach a place after hearing. If someone calls us, we hear the sound because of the air circulation, and we approach that sound or the place from which the sound comes. It is clearly said in this verse that these are all movements of the air. The ability to detect odors is also due to the action of air. So, okay, so let us get started. Om Jnana Timirandasya Jnananjana Shalakaya Chakshu Unmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha Shri Chaitanya Manobhishtam Stapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Vanchakalpatarubhishcha Kripa Sindhubhya Evacha Patitanam Pavanebhyo Vaishnavebhyo Namo Namaha Jai Shri Krishna Chaitanya Prabhu Nityananda Shri Advaita Gadadhar Shivasadi Gaura Bhaktabinda Hare Krishna 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 Hare 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 Rama 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 Hare Hare. So today we are reading from Srimad Bhagavatam 3:26, that is Canto 3, and chapter 26 and verse number 37. And this particular verse is actually describing mostly the characteristics of air and its importance. So just to give a little bit of background, Devahuti had been asking Kapila Dev about bhakti, jnana, and yoga, and Kapila had already told her, explained to her about bhakti, and she was fully satisfied with his answer. And bhakti, of course, is supreme, and it cannot be done, like karma, jnana, and the yoga without bhakti. They are not like complete, really. So next, now what Kapila is doing is that he is actually discussing about jnana and the Sankhya and Mahatattva, and he's going through all those things and elements. So we are actually now discussing about the 5 gross elements. I mean, one of the 5 gross elements. The 5 gross elements being fire, air, water, ether, and earth. And so we are discussing about here air and what are its characteristics. And Srila Prabhupada, of course, has given a very, very nice purport and translation as usual. So the translation, it says that the action of the air is exhibited in movements, So why is air important? What is one of the characteristics of the air? One is that it is because it's able to move. It's able to move. Then he says it's able to mix, and then it allows approach to the objects of sound, and other sense perceptions, and providing for proper functioning of all the other senses. So these are the primary things which he has given for this particular translation. And I thought that I'll also read very quickly the translation and the commentary by Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur. It's a brief one. So Vishwanath Thakur Chakravarti says that the distinctive qualities of air are its actions of moving, gathering, conjunction, leading sense objects to the sense organ, and giving life to the senses. And then in his commentary, he says, the characteristics of air are described. It provides movement as moving the branches of trees. It causes association as in bringing grass together. It causes cohesion of an object as one unit. It brings the sense objects such as sound, coolness, or fragrance to the origin, such as ear, skin, or nose. It should be understood that movement, association, and bringing the sense object to the sense are all particular types of conjunction or prapti. Air brings life to all the senses. These action of the air are its distinctive features, abhilakshanam. So this is what, different, mostly the commentaries are a little bit similar, except for 1 or 2 points. So Srila Prabhupada, he says in his commentary, or what he is saying, that we can look at it like when we look at the characteristics of air or discuss about air, we can think about it like in 2 ways. One is externally, that is externally to our body, and one is internally, that is within ourselves, the air that is within ourselves. So he divided it into 2 parts, and he says, like, whenever the tree branches are moving, or whenever, we have these dry leaves, they are moving around, then we can hear, and it is all only due to the action of air. Otherwise, they won't be moving. And then he goes on, he says that, in our body, it's so important. The element of air is so very important, and we have to be so much aware of it, because the thing is, if it is impeded, like the air circulation in our body, then so many diseases can come about. That is why it is so important. And, we have like an Ayurvedic system, which is from the Rig Veda, and which is, of course, described there. And it is so important because in the Ayurvedic system, they treat illnesses based on the basis of air circulation also. Like, they know that, okay, if you have this disease, then probably it's a problem with the air circulation, and they treat it accordingly. And, those who do yoga also, they have these yoga mudras, where where if the air circulation is impeded in some way, you do particular mudras. Of course, I'm not very familiar with them, but I know that they are there, that there are those air mudras, like air to fix the circulation of the air. The yoga people also, they know about this in more detail than I do, of course. And then Srila Prabhupada says, particularly in our nervous system, nervous system, mental faculties, air is so important. And then he gives the example of, like some people, they have these nervous breakdowns, or they have madness, or they have paralysis. And why do they have that? Because in their body, there's not enough air. And whenever there is some deficiency in the air, then all these problems actually arise. And actually, it is very, very interesting, because like Srila Prabhupada has only mentioned in the purport that there are so many diseases, there are many diseases which is related to this imbalance of air in our body. And actually, if you go to think about it, even so in this nervous system, of course, when our nervous system gets impacted, then things like creativity and then communication and all those things also get impacted. And also, air is important for our respiratory system, for proper breathing, for lungs. That's why, people also do like pranayam, they'll do this regulated breathing just to regulate their breathing and make their breathing like stronger. So that is also one way, people do to regulate their breathing. And, there are so many diseases. Like, for example, we know like brain hemorrhage is because oxygen does not reach the brain. That's again a air thing. And then also, not only deficiency of air, but sometimes there is an excess of air, and so we have things like neck pain, we have acidity, gastric issues, nausea, and varicose veins, and even like things like arthritis. It's because of this air not being regulated, and there's too much air, and there's dryness, blood becomes less, and then there is knee pain, and then there's wrist pain, and all that. So air is so very important, and of course, there are so many perspectives, like the Ayurvedic perspective and the yoga perspective and all that. And of course, Srila Prabhupada has pointed out that about Ayurveda in this purport. And then, and I was also thinking that we really don't get enough air, because I think when we were children, we used to go around and play outside a lot, and so we used to get a lot of air, we used to get a lot of fresh air. And unfortunately, children today, because of all the digital media and the video games and all that, they are just inside the house. And what to talk of like computer games, but even sometimes I find that there's so much of consumerism like now, that children are like, many parents are buying children so many toys, and these children are like just playing in the house, inside the house. They are not really going out in the fresh air, running around and so on. So this getting fresh air is very, very important, not only like for children, but even to us as adults. It is very, very important. That's a very important part of life, and we should not ignore it. And it in our generation, when we were growing up, it was a big thing. We used to be playing outside all the time, and then coming, doing our homework, and our brain used to be fresh, and so it makes a whole lot of difference. Another thing, which I was thinking about is also eating, because our diets are not that regulated, firstly. When we go out to work and, we come, then we don't have time sometimes to make fresh food, and then we are just heating off the refrigerator. That's not very healthy, because when we have the good food, then all these elements will be regulated. They play a part. The good food plays a part. Another thing that I read and I found very interesting was Prabhupada. Prabhupada actually was known for eating very, very slowly, very slowly. He used to chew his food very, very well. And, his assistant also used to say that when he was eating, he used to eat very, very carefully. And so, of course, he taught us to offer food to Krishna as prasadam. And then, so he was very much aware of, very mindful of the consciousness that the food had, very food. And like Krishna is the taste of the food, right? So if we eat like slowly, slowly, then we are able to taste the food. Then we don't need to eat so much. Then otherwise we're just swallowing and then we have to go in 5 minutes somewhere. So that does not, it does not do good to like our digestion, when you're just kind of gulping down food. So firstly, food should be respected. That is one thing, that, when we eat food, when food comes before us, we should be respecting food. And actually, we think that this does not have an impact, but actually it does, the consciousness with which you eat food. And then another thing is, we should eat very slowly so that the nutrients absorbed. So the other day, I was just eating like really, really slowly because I thought, let me try this experiment, And really, you really can feel the taste of the food, and you can feel like you're eating something, something substantial, So like if you try it for a week, just try to eat like very, very slowly, just very, very slowly. And then what happened is, not only is that will help for physical well-being, but also for spiritual well-being, that will help. And so try to make food eating a time not like of racing. And then also another thing is that Prabhupada said the purity of food, the purity of food, what we are eating, how much we are eating. Like, I mean, it should be moderate eating, not like too much eating and so on. And then also, of course, there's a personal, people do have personal preferences, but we have, these are some of these little points that we can learn from, Srila Prabhupada's like very, very careful eating, actually, he used to do. So all these things also, of course, this is not given in the purport, but it is my thought. It was my thought, and I thought that, it's going to regulate these elements too. Then that plays such an important part, having a regulated diet. And I don't think that we are very good at it, and we can improve on this, if we are aware, and if we are aware how important it is to our health also. And then, of course, then Srila Prabhupada, in his purport, he goes on and he says that now he's talking about the external part of the air, external part of how air is important, because then it carries sound, because if someone's calling me, then I can hear because of the air, that is in between, which is carrying the sound from one place to another. And then Srila Prabhupada says that, of course, he ends the purport, of course, with saying that even we can detect odors like smell, air. If there was no air, we could not we could not detect any odors, whether it's a good odor or a bad odor. The air is the one that actually carries that particular odor. So that is why it's very important. Then when we go to the purport of Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur, he says pretty much the same thing. Then he talks about movement, like movement of the branches, which similar to what Srila Prabhupada is saying. And then I was also thinking that, after I did some reading, that, for movement is so important in our life, like even physical movement, of course, air does, but like even for us, movement. Like sometimes what happens is that, we may have a headache and we may not want to do a japa, but it's important to move, and it's in fact, when we have a headache, we should do more japa, And then another thing is sometimes we get like really caught up with negativity, and then we get it becomes an obstacle to move forward. So we can say that, whenever we have this negativity, we should just throw it at once and just move forward. We should just not carry it with us, because ultimately, even those emotions, they impact our health, and they cause all these imbalances. And then Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur also is talking about association. He says, like, how air keeps the grass together, and it causes cohesion of an object. So he says it is important for cohesion. And again, I was thinking that, yeah, association is so important, the right association, which kind of is uplifting to us, encourages us, that's very important, devotee association, and of course, he's also raising the same points, that air is bringing life to actually all our senses, that's one of the primary gross elements. So that is why it is so very important, the regulation of air. And so, because I think we have some more time, I thought what I'll go over is a few more things, which I think will, very interesting. So you all must have heard of Lord Dattatreya, who was an incarnation of, Trimurti, incarnation of Vishnu, actually, mentioned in Bhagavatam also. And so Dattatreya, once he was roaming in the forest, and he met King Yadu, and King Yadu asked Dattatreya, "Why are you so happy? How can you remain so happy? Can you give me the secretness of your happiness? And who is your guru?" And Dattatreya said, "Look, my Atma itself is my guru." He says, "My Atma is my guru, but I have learned wisdom from 24 sources. And so, therefore, they are my gurus." And I thought I'll read the 24 this is 24 individuals whom he mentions, just because it's so interesting. And, some of you may already know it. But then part of it is also because one of his gurus is air, So it is earth, water, air, fire, sky, moon, sun, pigeon, python, ocean, moth, bee, honey gatherer, elephant, deer, fish, dancing girl, pingala, raven, child, maiden, serpent, and arrow maker, spider, and beetle. But he says, okay, so among all these 24, air is also there. And why, and what does he learn from air? He says, from air, I learned that, like, though it is moving everywhere, it's not attached to anything. So when we move around, the people of the world, we shouldn't have, like, unnecessary, like, too much deep attachment to them. And so it gives, air teaches us detachment, and it teaches us freedom. And so whenever we have these physical and emotional constraints, we have to practice that detachment, and freedom from desires, worldly attachments and desires. And, that's what actually brings us peace. It's very interesting. Actually, there are a lot of things that we can learn from air. For one thing, that, being unaffected in dualities, that is sadness and in sadness and in happiness and victory and in defeat, to be like air is always flowing, right? Regardless. So that is how we have to learn to flow with life. That's one thing good. And then another thing is that a non-possessiveness is not becoming, like, too much possessive about anything. Again, that causes like, air is not possessive, it just moves around, right? Wherever it moves around, it moves around. And then another thing is, it's simple, it's just moving around. So I thought we have to approach, like, simplicity, contentment, these things are there. And then also, we have to navigate the dualities of life, become equanimous, because that is one of the characteristic of air. It doesn't stop anywhere, in under any situation in life, whether it's happy or sad. It's only, like, going on and on, right? It's not affected by sense. It goes here, it goes there. And then in crisis, if there is, it teaches us in a way, teaches us crisis management, because what happens is that in calm also it's there, in chaos also it's there, it's everywhere. So the thing is, it doesn't lose its inner essence. So that's some very important points that we can learn from it. And I came across these three Bhagavatam verses, which is pretty much what we are talking about here, but I thought I'll read at least two of them. If we have time, we'll read three, but it gives us some very good pointers. So one is 11.7.39, Srimad Bhagavatam, 11.7.39, and I'll just read the translation. It says, a learned sage should take his satisfaction in the simple maintenance of his existence and should not seek satisfaction through gratifying the material senses. In other words, one should take care for the material body in such a way that one's higher knowledge is not destroyed, so that one's speech and mind is not deviated from self-realization. And this is again talking about the importance of health, actually, how we have to have this regulated eating, sleeping, and everything should be moderate, and then, there's no substitute to exercise. I mean, we think that there is no substitute, it is it has to be done, actually. And so only when one's body is fit, then one can really do other things very well. So it has to come in the center, somehow in our lives, in some way. We have to just have some amount of time allocated towards maybe a little bit of exercise, which will keep all these elements in balance, so to say. And then the next verse is also actually very nice, and it really talks about air as such, or it talks about wind. It says, even a transcendentalist is surrounded by innumerable material objects which possess good and bad qualities. However, one who has transcended material good and evil should not become entangled even when in contact with material objects. Rather, he should act like the wind. So here again, the importance of acting like the wind is said, that even if one is of a transcendentalist, you're surrounded by these kind of material objects, but the thing is, you should not get entangled with them, entanglement. So, and in the purport, it is said that the wind is actually the external manifestation of air, and prana is the internal manifestation. And so the wind goes through this area of waterfalls, right? And it goes through fire areas, some whatever, and it goes through all kinds of areas. And similarly, we go through so many situations. Sometimes it says that we may, here we may be chanting Hare Krishna in a very nice atmosphere, and sometimes in a hellish city. But what happens is that both the times we don't have to be frightened or disturbed, and a wind is never fearful, air is never fearful. So we never have to be fearful and fearful or anxious in any situation. So we have to learn that. And then also also throughout this world, we move along gently, like without too much attachment, and doing our duty, of course. And and then I'll just read the third verse, because I think we have 2 minutes more. Although a self-realized soul may live in different material bodies while in the world, experiencing their various qualities and function, he's never entangled, just like the wind, which carries aromas, but does not actually mix with them. So like we go through so many phases of life, like childhood, then we go through adolescence, then we go adulthood, then we go old age, and our body keeps on changing. And but then a Krishna conscious body always knows that a Krishna conscious person knows that he or she is not actually the body, but the soul. And so he does not like get impacted by like just like the air, it carries so many aromas, but it actual nature of the air, the basic essence of the air is the same. Sometimes it's bad odor, sometimes it's good odor, but basic essence is the same. Similarly, our body is temporary, but really our essence is the spirit soul. So just to recap, we first, what we did was we first looked over what Srila Prabhupada's commentary we discussed in detail for this particular verse, and he gave very beautiful characteristics of the air, like moving, mixing, and then externally and internally. Then he talked about how diseases come about because of imbalance in the air, and how Ayurveda, treats this on the basis. Then he talks about proper functioning of the senses and so on. And, so we talked about how the branches and how air is important for everything else. And then we went to Vishwanath Chakravarti Thakur and discussed his commentary. And he's talking also, in addition to movement, he's talking how air is important to all the senses. And he's also talking about association and cohesion as being one of the characteristics of the air. And we had also talked about, how eating properly may regulate this airflow in our body. And then, of course, we went to Lord Dattatreya and how air was his guru, and a little bit how he learned from them. And then we related these purports mostly to Srimad Bhagavatam verses from 11th canto, the 3 verses that I mentioned. And, we discussed it in light of, this purport regarding, that is the 11th canto 7, Canto 7, 39, 40, and 41. And we discussed it in light of how air is important, so important, and what it can teach us. So that's all I have. And do you have any questions or comments? You can bring it up now.
Hare Krishna Mataji, this is Sachi Sutadas. Please accept my humble obeisances all to Rishi Srila Prabhupada.
Hare Krishna, Prabhu.
Mataji, very wonderful class. I thought at first it sounds like an anatomy class, but it's you touched on various domains that's inspired me about the importance of air. Um, my thoughts went to when we learned mridangam or mridanga, we've had a special training about how the sound should pass in the air based on the dimensions of the hall, what we are playing, number of people in the hall. And when we play something like a taka dum, the sustenance of the dum, it's purely based on the air, keeping the sound. In today's world, it's all like digital. When I was teaching a student, he said, "I can copy and paste." That's new generation student
Yes,
who is
yes.
more into digitalize. But the the reality is like how to sustain that. It's a concept of a sustenance and a reverb and all those things from the physics. That. But it's so wonderful. The other thing that you also said about today's kids are more towards video games and all those things without utilizing the fresh air. But we have to tell the younger generation, even for a computer or a console or whatever it needs a fan to cool itself.
Yes,
So
yes.
there is a fan which is dependent on air
Uh-huh.
to reduce the heat and make the functioning effectively. So air is everywhere. Thank you very much, Mataji. It's a wonderful class. I learned a lot from the internal, external, digestion, and all those things. It's very valid point. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you, Prabhu, for the mridangam and the computer. It's really beautiful points you brought up. Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, if not, then we'll conclude. Grantraj Srimad Bhagavatam ki jai, Srila Prabhupada ki jai. Hare Krishna. Thanks for attending.